My name is Dale Bertrand. I'm from Fire and Spark, and today we are going to talk about supply chain resiliency. So our main presentation today, we have Tali Rosman from Xerox. She's the general manager and vice president of 3D printing at Xerox, and she's responsible for Xerox's 3D printing strategy and also their product roadmap. Prior to Xerox, she was vice president and head of strategy for Nice Americas. And then before that, she was at Stratasys, where she held a number of different roles, like head of product strategy and operations, and then also director of corporate development. So Tali, we're going to hand it off to you.
Sure, thank you. Happy to be here. As Dale mentioned in his intro, I come from the industry, having worked before that in Stratasys. So I've been in Xerox for almost 6 months heading 3D printing. And before that in Stratasys, actually, one of the things that I did was lead the acquisitions of service bureaus. So Stratasys acquired at the time Harvest and Solid Concepts, and we merged them with what was Red-Eye and Stratasys to form what is now known as Stratasys Direct Manufacturing. So in my 3D printing career, I've actually also had a lot of exposures to service bureaus and the challenges that they face, and everything from, what technologies to invest in, to how to work with customers and how to best position ourselves. So I want to start with your customers first, and I promise this is going to be a short deck, and we're going to leave more time for Q&A and a discussion. But when you look at your customers today, before COVID, and I think COVID even made it much clearer, they're exposed to operational risks. So as supply chains in the last few years have really been focused on cost cutting, that came at the expense of flexibility, versatility, and the ability to handle disruptions. In March, the Institute for Supply Chain Management did a survey with US manufacturers where 75% said their supply chain took a hit as a result of COVID. I think what was even more interesting in that survey is that 50% didn't have a plan for what to do when that happens, which is pretty remarkable when you think about it, because in the software world, every company has a business continuity plan, disaster recovery. They know what to do when there's a disruption, backup servers, what have you. And yet, when it comes to the physical world, to parts, most companies don't have such a plan in place. And even the ones that did, it wasn't as robust as what we expect in the software world. And so I think with that and COVID making it very clear to them, I think your customers are now understanding that they have to transform. They don't have a choice. There's so much going on. There's so many expectations from customers, and there's so many things, so many issues that COVID exposed that they have to change. And that change is going to be in multiple fronts. It's not just 3D printing. There's a lot of technologies that are impacting supply chain and manufacturing that are all actually converging and coming together to greater maturity at the same time. So, we're going to talk, we're going to double click and talk more about 3D printing. But even before that, IoT, the Internet of Things, that's really gaining traction. I read an IDC report recently where they're looking into what manufacturers are spending their IoT dollars on, and a lot of it is obviously to support manufacturing operation and more efficient management of their production assets. So, that's one of the trends that's coming. Obviously, when you look at artificial intelligence, machine learning, and analytics, almost every company is implementing that, starting to automate warehouse operations more and more, having better management of inventory, better predictability around it. IDC actually expects that by the end of 2021, half of all manufacturing supply chains will invest in that and reap a lot of productivity benefits, about 15% on average. 3D printing, we're gonna double click and talk a lot more about that, but in one sentence, it's obviously gonna allow companies to cut back on logistics and transportation costs and risks, reduce carbon footprint, address geopolitical risks, trade wars, tariffs, what have you, and better mitigate risks around offshore outsourcing and get products to customers faster. Blockchain, interestingly, is also in that report was identified as a key technology that's going to make an impact. IDC is forecasting 25% of OEMs using blockchain to source spare parts by 2023, which is very significant. So they foresee companies using it to document the chain of custody for goods. Sorry, Dale, was there a question or?
Oh, no, keep going.
Perfect. And, last but not least is obviously robotics and automation. So, and by the way, all those things are not operating in silos. When you think about robotics, so AI and IoT connectivity obviously greatly improve that. And we're going to see more and more of industrial automation and cobots, so the collaborative robots in manufacturing floors. So I think all these trends, even before COVID, were coming together and, creating a lot of challenges, but also a lot of opportunities for customers. And I think those trends are even greater now in a post-COVID world. So there was a really great report by Barclays that was issued this month about how the post-COVID world is going to look like and what are the mega trends that COVID has brought forth or even just accelerated already existing trends. So, first of all, there's the acceleration of the deglobalizations, right? I think more and more companies are going to look to reshore production, and more governments are going to encourage that and give grants for that. In terms of some of the long-term trends that happened before COVID, so the air travel, the migration of labor more easily, I think those trends step back in a post-COVID world. Additional push for automation and digitization. So that mega trend that was already happening before COVID is just going to accelerate further with the reshoring of production, with more restricted forms of travel, to the point that we talked about before, and with social distancing going to be more and more prevalent and potentially here to stay. All those require a technological response. So with that, I think the introduction of more automation into manufacturing, which will include 3D printing, is going to get an even bigger boost in the post-COVID world. The other thing is I think we're also going to see increased demand for green policy. So I think governments are going to be more demanding. COVID, really made us more aware of the potential risk of natural catastrophes. And I think as we're going to see an increased push through green policies, obviously you can tie that to 3D printing because you're cutting the supply chains, you're manufacturing closer to home. So in the reducing of your transportation and shipping, you're also significantly reducing your carbon footprint. So leveraging on, the more demand for reshoring and the government policies that could be in place to encourage that, and greener policies and the incentives that are going to go with that, 3D printing can really kind of fit in well with both of these mega trends. And I also think we're going to see a lot more, or I should say Barclays believe, and I subscribe to that, we're going to see more volatility in the macroeconomic terms that are going to cause uncertainty to companies. And so with all these mega changes and mega trends and the uncertainty that they bring, customers, to the point where we're making before, realize that they have to transform. Before I say where's the role of the service bureaus and all that transformation, just to double click on 3D printing, and we already said it fits really well with a lot of those mega trends and help companies address it. And I know most people on the line, I saw who subscribed, most of you are coming from the industry, so I won't belabor you with all the great benefits that 3D printing has, but just to touch on, the big ticket items, the fact that it's direct manufacturing, without the need for expensive toolings and molds. And you can switch between making whatever product you were making before into making ventilator parts or face shields or whatever in minutes instead of weeks that would take you with a traditional supply chain. So all that flexibility, all that versatility makes a very compelling case for 3D printing in this very dynamic environment. And if you can leverage the full potential of 3D printing by also thinking about the freedom of design, so allowing you to make the geometries you couldn't make before, you can really reap a lot of the benefits. And the freedom of design can manifest itself in the fact that you can take the same part and have better properties. You can reduce the weight, you can extend its life, you can do a lot of great things. You can obviously reduce waste as well, use less materials. And also, it's not just at the part level, it's also the assembly level. So because you can make the geometries that you couldn't make before, what used to take you a lot of parts being sourced from different suppliers, each with their own supply risk and challenges, you can now make that assembly that was composed of a lot of parts in a single part, in a single print, significantly reducing your supply chain risks and adding that much needed resiliency. And so when you think about, the benefits that it has and where service bureaus fit in, I think, manufacturers, as they're doing that, as they want to build this flexibility, as they want to reduce risks, they also have a lot of knowledge gaps. And I think this is a great way for service bureaus to come in and position themselves as the trusted partner for this transformation. So service bureaus both bring that technology expertise, and I think we're going to talk about in the panel, I think it was mentioned Xometry, work with a whole host of technologies in 3D printing and non-3D printing. So those level of expertise that exist in service bureaus and seem very obvious to a lot of us, they don't exist in most companies. And a service bureau that can help walk customers through the different technologies for where 3D printing makes sense and what 3D printing technology makes the most sense, and help them to adopt it. And also the knowledge gaps, also help them with the DFAM, with the design for additive manufacturing. Those are skills that are not prevalent in the market today. So service bureaus that know how to work with customers to identify those parts that make the most sense for 3D printing, not just in terms of their geometry, but also in terms of the supply chain risk, know how to work with them on the assemblies, to fewer parts. I think those service bureaus tend to benefit and help their customers. And when you make your customer a winner, you obviously will make yourself a winner in the process. And the last point in that is obviously about the whole CapEx versus OpEx. So I think in a post-COVID world, some companies are going to be more hesitant for capital expenditures. So investing in the printers and hiring people to be the machine operators and design optimization and post-processing and whatnot. And I think service bureaus that, inherently give you that opportunity to do the paper part and move to an OpEx model that's lower risk and has more flexibility than the CapEx model, I actually think service bureaus are well positioned. And I wasn't surprised in the poll to hear that a lot of people are actually doing well, in spite of COVID. And so as you are thinking about helping your customers, we at Xerox are thinking about where we can help you. And we obviously bring a lot of experience and technology and wide infrastructure. So, in 90 seconds about what we're doing, Xerox has been in the 3D printing space for quite a few years. We have printed technology that's being used in a few companies in that space. We have a lot of work we've done around materials. We have a lot of work that was done out of PARC, the Xerox Palo Alto Research Center, around software for different customers like NASA and DARPA. By the way, some of those software capabilities, and especially the model-based AI, we've embedded in our metal 3D printer, which is the printer that we're going to be launching at the end of this year. And, all that being Xerox, we wrap all of it with, the kind of the best in class customer service and the strong Xerox brand and all the quality that comes with it. So with regards to the metal printer we're launching at the end of this year, it's actually based on a proprietary technology of liquid metal, making it kind of very simple and compact. We know how to take off-the-shelf metal wire. And basically, we're actually launching it with aluminum. We're going to have more materials to come, but we're launching it at the end of this year with aluminum. And we make really high quality parts. As they come off the printer, it's sand casting or better surface finish. And, being wire, it's obviously presents a lot of benefits versus powders that are more dominant in metal 3D printing today. So it's known materials because it's off the shelf. Because it's off the shelf, it's a fraction of the price of the powder. It's about 1/10 per kilo. So the total cost of ownership are significantly lower. The cycle time, so the time to part, is much shorter because there's no debinding or powder removal. And last but not least is obviously the safety. So when you think about, powders, and a lot of you guys are probably running metal powders, printers, all the risks that are associated and facility modifications you have to do and the special PPE equipment you need to handle it. Well, our printer can sit out in the open with, very minimal safety concerns. So, with all that, I think there's a lot of changes going on in the market. Some, were pre-COVID and some were accelerated and or even generated by COVID. I think all of those create a lot of challenges and opportunities for your customers, and the service bureaus that will understand that well and will come as the trusted partner to their customers and help them specifically with the 3D printing portion of it, easily adopting it, giving them an OpEx model that they can work with easily, and complementing for all their knowledge gaps are going to be made the winners.
Tali, I really want to kick it off. Like, the question that was coming to my mind is, like, what investments should service bureaus be thinking about making now for the road ahead in terms of investing in capabilities, equipment, expertise? What do you see?
Yeah, so I think, first of all, in terms of the technology, it really depends on the customers you're servicing, right? And what technology from the various 3D printing technologies the best fit for their needs. I would encourage everybody to, think about, if we're talking about the reliability, so look into that, look into the printers that give a lot of reliability, high quality, that can be versatile across different things. In terms of the capabilities, I think, some of the things we mentioned, right? The consulting approach, the DFAM knowledge, I think design for additive manufacturing is a great source of value to customer and something that isn't prevalent in the market. So I think customers who will know how to do that with their customers will be well positioned.
But I wanted to turn back to Tali because I know that, and I don't know if you have anything to do with this area of Xerox, but I know Xerox is working with AI to integrate that into design software. So I'm really curious what AI's role is, because we live in a world right now where anybody who's building any kind of software is slapping AI. So I'm just curious what we can expect in terms of the practical benefits.
For us specifically, we've used some of Xerox AI capabilities into making our printer better, specifically around a lot of the capabilities around the simulation. So it's not at what you see is what you get that you're used to from a 2D world, but we're definitely making a lot of progress there with better simulation to help customers more easily forecast how the part's going to look like.
It's all about DFAM. It's all about your design and your design approach. And a lot of times you don't want to take a CNC part and just throw it into an additive platform.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, because a lot of times we're seeing from customers this comparison of the part that was designed for traditional, how much is it going to cost me to 3D print it? Or really, it should be, here's the part that I designed for traditional, let's optimize it for 3D printing, let's reduce the weight, let's introduce line structure, let's even improve the properties, weight reduction and all that stuff. Now tell me how much it's going to cost.
And anyone else, any comments around machine reliability or the variability around post-processing?
Yeah, and I'll just say that, 6 or 7 years ago when Mac and I were co-workers in Stratasys, we thought that by 2020, 3D printing in production is going to be much more mainstream than it is today. I think one of the reasons it's still not what we thought it was going to be is because the burden of proof is on the printer vendors to ensure that repeatability and reliability that customers are expecting. And that's something that the industry needs to do, because at the end of the day, customers want dependability, not the wizardry, which is why I think the service bureaus, like, they will be the trusted advisor that will be honest with their customers about what it can do and what it can't do and where it makes sense and so forth, will be the best positioned.
For a service bureau today, what's the one change, the one piece of equipment, the one area of expertise, like the one change that you would make today for a service bureau to be better positioned for the next 5 years?
Well, if I was doing a shameless plug, I'd say the Xerox printer. I won't. No, so I think it's, you kind of said it well, right? And depending on the size, it's finding the niche in the one area you really are the expert in and can give value add to customers. And I think some of the knowledge gaps that customer has today in the market, especially around DFAM and the likes, are going to be very important capabilities for service bureaus to offer.